How's it going, everyone? Welcome back. Hopefully everyone is having a lovely day. So the Cincinnati Reds, they're on a little bit of a cold streak lately here. And I think when you get on these cold streaks, you know, when the going's good, you don't really talk about the things you're concerned about as much, like the little small adjustments in the lineup or the micromanaging stuff. That kind of stuff, it doesn't really stick out as much when the winning is going well. Recently, obviously, as we know, the offense hasn't been as well. The bullpen's won a couple games. The Reds been struggling, 3.5 games out of first place. And as of the recording of this video, we're seeing the Reds today getting blanked by the Indians. I think we're 4 2/3, 5 innings in against a lefty. And the Reds have 2 hits against that lefty, one by Kevin Newman and the other not by a guy named a player that David Bell platoons against the left-handed pitchers, which brings about the big question. We see it all the time. What kind of lineup is this that David Bell threw out? Well, we know at this time, in this point in juncture, especially in David Bell's tenure, when you get that what is this lineup kind of thing, you already know a lefty's on the mound for the other team, which brings up the question. Is David Bell, do we like what David Bell's doing here with to say, hey, let's platoon everybody. We'll bring in whoever's best against the lefties. We'll bench the other guys. Is that the proper way? Is that a good way to do things? Are we just getting a little overexcited now because the Reds are losing that David Bell's doing this? Because a lot of frustration starting to mount with David Bell throwing out a bunch of AAA players sometimes, to put it lightly, because they're better against the lefties. And here's the thing, from my personal perspective, I think there's a time for it, there's a place for it, and there's a time for it, and there's a place for it not to be. Ramos is a great example. He's 31 years old. He is what he is. He hasn't spent much time at all in the MLB. He might be all right now. He might be hotter now, whatever. But as a complete, you know who he is as a player. And honestly, I don't think that's a guy that starts in your lineup. I hope he does well. I do. I hope he does well for the Reds. But I don't care if it's a lefty on the mound or not. I don't care if he's batting 270 against lefty. You got to let some other guys play in his spot. Votto's an example, I guess. So he's older. He's batting 180, 190. He's been struggling lately. Last few years. I mean, if a lefty comes up and Votto's struggling against the lefties, yeah, you go bench him. Go ahead and bench him. And bring in somebody else that you think can do a little bit better. Now, granted, again, you say what you will. I mean, Votto's on pace to put up ridiculous power numbers this season. And again, I think he's a guy he should still be finding in the lineup because of that. He brings that pop to the lineup, a big difference maker there. But let's talk about, some of these younger guys that David Bell is benching. TJ Friedl, I don't understand it. That one's one that makes no sense to me because TJ Friedl's batting 290 against lefties. And for some reason, every time a lefty comes on the mound, TJ Friedl gets taken out of the lineup. He's the superior defensive player. He's the superior all-around hitter so far this season. So why he gets benched, I'm not sure that would make sense. Will Benson. Now, Will Benson, it reminds me so much of Jesse Winker, and that's what scares me. Will Benson struggled last season. He struggled to start this season, but then he figured it out. And Will Benson's been one of the best hitters on this team. The thing is, he's seen in his entire career less than 30 at-bats against left-handed pitching. He's got 2 hits, not good. His numbers are ugly. There's no debate in it. But he's had no opportunity to get the at-bats. He's had no opportunity to get the experience. He's had no opportunity to get the growth. And I said Jesse Winker because it reminds me they did the same thing to Jesse Winker when he was really young. But how exactly my thing exactly is, if you think this is a complete hitter, if you think this is going to be an asset to your team, if you think this is going to be a starter in the future, how can you bench him every single night and expect him to get better against the left-handed pitchers? Will Benson should be in the lineup every night. TJ Friedl should be in the lineup every night. Now, there's other guys, again, you can look down the order. You might be able to substitute some guys in a struggle against the left-handed hitters or left-handed pitchers. Again, you might want to give Friedl the day off every once in a while. I get that. That's fine. But if, these teams it seems like they're throwing lefties out every other freaking night against the Reds. And I would too. Because if I knew that you was going to play a team that was going to bench half their players, half their starters for other guys that aren't the same overall players, I'd be lining up the lefties every time too. And that's the concern. You want to put your best 9 out there on the field every single night. And I think that's where we go back to like the who these are kind of players things. The Reds are really young now, so it's difficult. I try to think back. Nick Castellanos is obviously, it's an example, I guess, would have stood out there because he's older. Nick Castellanos is 30. I don't know his splits right now, but let's say about a 320 against righties and about a $180 against lefties. He's been in the league for 7-8 years. That's not changing. You know what he's going to give you against the lefties. In that case, you bench him. All right, let's bench him. And we'll bring in, in this case, okay, Nick Senzel. Nick Senzel's great against the lefties. Understand it. Kevin Newman's above average against the lefties, about 280. All right, do it. But what you don't want to do, I think, is stunt the growth of your younger players and their opportunity to get better against the lefties. And what you don't want to do is, again, we'll go down to Ramos' situation or Fairchild, if you will. You don't want to bring in these guys that just overall are substantially lesser players, that you don't feel like, even if they're batting 20 to 30 points better, maybe they're batting 240 or 250, the other guy's batting 210, 220. Like if I had to choose between a guy that's predominantly been a bench player his entire career, been in AAA, that's batting 240 against the lefties, or if I had to choose Joey Votto, future Hall of Famer, so I'm taking Votto. Because you take the more complete player. Or, in again, some cases, Votto's a little older, a little different story. Castellanos is another example, and while he struggled against the lefties, wasn't very good in the field. But let's say you have a guy that's really good in the field, maybe your best defensive player, struggles a little bit against the left. You have to consider all of that in the full product. And I think that's the one thing about David Bell he has to be careful with, is you need to look at the overall player. How's he playing? You have to have the feel of the game. Is he a great fielder? Is he tearing the cover off the baseball lately? How many at-bats has he got against lefties? How old is this guy? Because what we've learned with this Reds team, especially recently, is bad defense will cost you games. It happened with Nick Senzel. They wanted to bring in Nick Senzel because he was better against lefties. He was causing the team, was it 2 games for 1 game with 3 errors in a game? And in that case, what's better? Nick Senzel batting a little bit better than TJ Friedl. I don't know if he was batting better than TJ Friedl. It was a little bit better against the lefties for that defensive, lapse. Was that worth it? That's the question I think David Bell has to ask. That's the question I think people should be asking David Bell in general. And I think that's where it's a little easier said than done for the Reds, because again, they're all so young. All these guys needed bats against lefties. I think that's where it becomes for the Reds in particular. If this is a veteran lineup, let's say they had 3-4 veterans on this team. Again, that's okay then. If they're batting, you get a veteran. It's not some MVP veteran. You got a veteran, he struggles against the lefty, you bench him. I get it. Newman's good against the right lefties. Bring him on in. Senzel's good against the lefty. Bring him on in. I don't have a problem with it. What I have a problem with, though, is understanding that this is a team building for the future. This is a team that doesn't have those proven veterans that say, hey, this guy shouldn't be batting against the lefties. Will Benson batting 30 times against the lefties ain't enough. TJ Friedl batting the same. He ain't got a lot of at-bats, 30, 40, 50 or so. It's not enough for these young guys. They need to be getting these at-bats to get better. And that's my biggest concern of it all, is because I'm looking towards the future of this team. Obviously, you want to see this team win now. You want to put the most complete players in. It's a tough decision, but you have to look at your lineup and say, who are my best 9? And then you're going to try to put your best 9 in every single time you can. And sometimes I think David Bell looks past that and gets past the feel of the game. Sometimes it says, I got to play the numbers. But the numbers aren't just at the plate. We brought it up. The numbers are on the field. There's the feel of the game. There's the late game managing. Because when you throw out all these guys early, here's the other thing that they've run into lately. When you throw out all these guys early, when they bring out righty and David Bell wants to take them all out, which is, hey, as you should, bring in your strongest lineup. That's great. That's what you have to praise him. He is trying to bring up the best matchup. He's trying to bring up the best lineup possible. But the thing is, when you do it that way, we've seen this a couple, Washington? A couple series ago. He had to bring in all the right-handed hitters back in, all the guys that are good against the righties. He pinch ran for 1. He might pinch ran for 2. He pinched it with the other one. So when that time came in the game, Nick Senzel, games on the line, struggles against the righties, had to come to the plate because they intentionally walked Ellie De La Cruz. He had no weapons left because he exhausted them all. And that's what happens when you play the platoon game early. So overall, yeah, I think there's a time and a place. I really do. You can get me to understand Newman. You can even get me to understand Senzel. Much further than not really, no. Again, I need major league proven baseball players that are going to be substituting these guys in. It can't be your bench players. It can't be guys that came up from AAA and to do all right against them. I need some proven guys to feel comfortable about it. And I think that's the thing. I want some proven guys, and hopefully it doesn't hurt the team so bad defensively where it's costing them runs in that situation. So I do think there's a place for it. I think it gets overdone sometimes. I think that's what we're starting to see it come down now. You put that spotlight on it when you start losing games to the lefties. And it's been happening a lot more lately. Nonetheless, love you guys' thoughts. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.